This is a tutorial for a simple ukulele chord melody solo for As Tears Go By the Rolling Stones or Marianne Faithfull to accompany my other tutorial for the chord progression on the song. My other tutorial can be found linked in the card above or in the video description below, and it may be worth you familiarising yourself with the chord progression first. We'll be looking at the song in the key of G major as per the Rolling Stones version of the song and my other tutorial. Before we get into breaking this arrangement down, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out with making more of these video tutorials moving forward. If you'd like a PDF of the tablature, either buy me a coffee, see how to do so in the description below the video, and I'll email a copy over to you. Alternatively, you could join me over at Patreon, where all my tutorials and accompanying PDFs can be found in one place. The link for this can also be found in the description below the video. The song is constructed of a 16-bar sequence that is effectively played 4 times throughout the whole song. We will be looking at a simple instrumental chord melody arrangement that can be played over these 16 bars. The chords that we need for this are a G major chord, an A7 chord, a C major chord, and a D7 chord. And we'll be using this rootless version of D7 for this arrangement. We'll also need an E minor chord, and there are also a couple of other chords that are used in the full chord progression, which are a B minor and an A minor 7, but we won't actually need them for the sake of this tutorial, as we'll be playing melody notes instead where these chord changes fall. As you can see in the tablature below, we have a single strum of G major on beat 1 of bar 1. So just to clarify, a vertical line of numbers in the tablature like this represents a strummed chord. And if you fret the numbers on each string, in this case, as per the tablature, you'll find you're fretting our standard G major shape. Then the single numbers we see on the next 3 beats of the bar represent individual melody notes. As a general guide, while playing chord melody pieces, we want to keep the chord, or at least part of the chord, fretted as long as possible while we play the melody notes that follow it. So in the case of bar 1 here, we want to strum the G chord on beat 1 of the bar, leave it ringing, then pick the G note at the 3rd fret of the E string on beat 2. Then, while still holding the rest of the G shape, we need to take our ring finger off the A string in order to pick that string open on beat 3. Then finally we put that finger back on again to pick that same string at the 2nd fret. You'll note that I'm using my thumb here to both strum the chord and pick the individual notes. I do this as it's the way that works best for me, especially when playing slower songs. But there's no reason why you couldn't play this with a finger or different fingers instead, or even a combination of fingers and thumb. So feel free to experiment and find what works best for you. So let me just play bar 1 again, and notice how I keep the chord fretted to let the strings that I'm not picking afterwards keep ringing for as long as possible. In the case of a song like this, we want to do this as much as possible, giving us what is known as a legato feel, where the notes flow smoothly from one note to the next without any silence between them. In bar 2, we change to an A7 chord, and we strum it once on beat 1. Then, letting the chord continue to ring, we pick the open A string on beat 2, the open E string on beat 3, and then finally the open G string on beat 4. So as you can see here, we don't have to change anything in the fretting of the A7 chord in order to play these individual notes, and hence we can leave some of the chord ringing throughout the bar. Just a quick note here for anyone who's playing a low G tuned ukulele, instead of playing the last note of this bar on the open G string, you would need to play this by adding a finger to the 3rd fret of the E string and picking that string there instead. So, same note. The good news is that this only happens twice in the whole arrangement, and is always in the same bar of A7. It's repeated in bar 6. Otherwise, we never pick any individual notes on the G string for the rest of the arrangement. So if I just play bars 1 and 2 together, we would have... Then in bar 3, we're actually going to strum a single C5 chord on beat 1 that lasts for 2.5 beats. The reason for playing this instead of our standard C major chord is because the melody note here is a G note, and by playing a C5 chord, We really spell that out as it's now doubled in the chord, both on the open G string and the 3rd fret of the E string. Then on the and after beat 2 we play an open E string by taking our fretting finger off, and then we put the finger back on at the 3rd fret to play the G note on the E string again. So, in bar 4 we change to our rootless D7 shape, strum the chord once on beat 1, but this lasts for a beat and a half, and then we pick the note at the 2nd fret of the E string, already in the chord, on the and after 2. Then we add our 3rd finger to the chord already fretted at the 3rd fret of the E string and pick that note on beat 3. And then finally we pick the open A string on the and after 3, which lasts for a beat and a half. So, another option I like to use here is that when we pick those notes on the E string at frets 2 and 3 after the initial strum, instead of picking those two notes individually, I like to play a hammer-on between them. A hammer-on is a technique where you pick the first note, in this case at the 2nd fret of the string, and then instead of picking another note at the 3rd fret, you just quickly add your next finger to the fretting hand to that fret without actually picking the string again. So instead of, you'd have, this would be represented on the tablature like so, with a little capital H over a legato slide between those two notes, as per the diagram. So if I now demonstrate bars 3 and 4, firstly without the hammer on, and now with the hammer on, the good news here is that bars 5 through to 8 are identical to the first 4 bars we've just looked at, so we have already covered half of the arrangement. So bars 1 to 8 would be 1, 2, 3, 4. In bar 9 we strum a single C chord on beat 1, pick the C note at the 3rd fret of the A string on beats 2 and then strum the C chord again on beat 3, and finally pick the B note at the 2nd fret of the A string on beat 4. Again, note that we can keep the C chord fretted throughout the bar until that final B note on beat 4. So, in bar 10 we play exactly the same sequence over that rootless D7 chord that we played in bar 4 and bar 8, with or without the hammer on. So, and then in bar 11 we strum a G chord on beat 1, pick the individual B note at the 2nd fret of the A string on beat 2, already in the fretted chord, then we strum the G chord again on beat 3, and then finally we take our 3rd finger off and play that A string open on beat 4. So, then in bar 12 we just strum an E minor chord which rings over beats 1 and 2, then pick an E note on the 4th fret of the C string already in the chord that rings over beats 3 and 4 of the bar, like so. So if we put those last 4 bars together, then in bar 13 we have a single strum of a C chord on beat 1. We then need to pick the E note at the 7th fret of the A string on beats 2 and 3. And we can either fret the C chord using our index finger like I've just done, which would allow the reach to the 7th fret with our little finger, or we could just slide up to the 7th fret with the finger that's fretting the C chord. So again, strum a C, pick 2 notes of E, and then we're going to strum right through all 4 strings holding that note on beat 4 of the bar. In bar 14 we pick that E note at the 7th fret of the A string again on beat 1 of the bar, which lasts for a beat and a half, and then on the and after 2 we pick the open E string, and then the 2nd fret of the E string on beat 3, and the 3rd fret of the same string on beat 4. So bars 13 and 14. Then in bar 15 we strum our rootless D7 on beat 1, which lasts for 2 beats. Then we add our ring finger to pick the G at the 3rd fret of the E string on the and after 3, and then the open A string on beat 4, and then back to the G at the 3rd fret of the E string, again on the and after 4. And finally in bar 16 we play exactly that same sequence over that rootless D7 chord that we played in bars 4, 8 and 10 with or without the hammer on. So bars 9 to 16 would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Which would take us right back to the beginning again. So that about wraps things up for this chord melody arrangement of As Tears Go By in G major. In a moment I'll play through the whole 16 bars once again, but before I do, if you found this tutorial helpful or have any questions, please leave a comment, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, as I regularly post video tutorials for ukulele at all different abilities. If you'd like a PDF of the tablature, buy me a coffee. See how to do so in the link in the video description below, and I'll email one over to you. Or alternatively, join me at my Patreon page, where all my tutorials and accompanied PDFs can be found in one place. The link for this can also be found in the description below. Thank you for watching, and bye for now. 1, 2, 3, 4.